wrong, and at least, and maybe at most, I can say that when I get something wrong, I'll just say it, and then I'll readjust my position and then go forward from there. I really thought all of this was being conducted in furtherance of global communism, but I missed it. It's all in furtherance of global, what, techism, scientism, I guess it is. A global technocracy based on scientism. But let's take a little break and come back, and I like what you're doing. Just let us all have it, me included. A little self-calibration is not always possible. Sometimes we need to be calibrated by others. We'll be right back. And in the meantime, be sure and take a look at Mr. Wood's website. I was thinking again, and I thought, you know, I can understand why people who are economically or intellectually privileged, shall we say, could view the world as in a state of, well, needing help. Chaos everywhere you look. All these various conflicts that can be, you know, easily put down with the use of force, but wouldn't it be better to just shape the world in a certain way? So I'm not really playing devil's advocate, or well, maybe, actually, maybe I am, except for this part. Absent the rejection of the Almighty Creator, what is it about this that is detrimental to the human being? I mean, is there any... I've often thought that the 30s were just a golden age of all kinds of things. From aviation to these various philosophies, you know, the New Age, or the New Thought movement that Neville Goddard was part of, but he wasn't a technocrat, and I just wonder. Somebody up there certainly thinks that. I mean, I can't figure out if the reason these people hold this philosophy and they really want, and there's so much energy is being put into this initiative. I'm wondering if it's all about them, or if they really feel that humanity at large will be happier under such a broad and totalitarian system. That doesn't really sound much like devil's advocate, but I'm just wondering what is in their minds philosophically that makes this okay somehow, unless they're Luciferian when it comes right down to it.
You know, that's a good question. I think it could be argued both ways. On one hand, I've seen an attitude of just sheer greed. I've seen this attitude for 40 years, and it's not uncommon. I'm not surprised anymore when I see just a complete expression of greed. I want more. But on the other hand, in the writings of these academics and, you know, other people around them, we've seen the fear that man is going to blow himself up one day and destroy the planet, just destroy everything.
Yeah.
There's this fear. And they believe that men are not able to self-regulate. Actually, Sigmund Freud had a lot to do with this, by the way, I think, with his whole idea of irrational desires, you know, that people have hidden in their heart. And if we let those get out of control, oh my gosh, the human race is doomed. And
right.
So we have to control these things. We have to, you know, we have to get people lined up where they won't do these things. And of course, they failed at every turn. You know, people are still killing each other and doing crazy things. So that wasn't a true answer. But I've seen this writing for decades where there's this almost irrational fear of society harming itself if they don't step in and do something. And you see, this kind of goes back to the thought that St. Simon had, that scientists and engineers are superior to all other men. They need to say this.
Yeah.
You know, they need to be the Superman, if you will, to come in and it's their manifest destiny, if you will, you know, to help the human race not destroy itself by doing all these things. And so I see that as a legitimate, you know, thread that you can follow. But then there's people like Al Gore that come on the scene. and Al Gore is just, I don't know how much of that line he believes, but I'll tell you what, the guy is hungry for money, and that's it. It's a scam he's promoting with this climate change, global warming stuff that we're all going to die when the oceans rise. And oh, by the way, my billions, I think he's the first green billionaire, actually, that's become a billionaire just because of green stuff. And, he's hyping this thing while he is living a virtually decadent lifestyle himself with no respect to living green or sustainable himself. And yet he's telling us that we need to. Like, come on, Al, get off of it. You're just a crook. You're just conning us. So, you see both sides of the coin. That's all I can say.
Okay.
But, yeah.
Yeah, I've often thought that the 30s were just, like I say, a golden era of so many things. Even John Baird, I believe his name was, a Scot, developed a three-dimensional color television picture in a giant glass vacuum tube in like 1937 or 38, and Frank Whittle and then Ernst Heinkel with the jet engines and all this stuff and all this nuclear stuff that was coming along. And it's really strange to look back in history and just marvel at how groups of people, like the Nazis, for example. The Germans took it pretty hard after the Treaty of Versailles. They got a lot of land, property taken away, and they were permitted to have shotguns so they could hunt game, but that was about it. And they were mad, and they are geniuses. They are, literature, music, technology, all kinds of inventions, engineering, everything. Nobody can deny these people have something going on. And then you see this massive movement where it's like, Dimension und der Führer and all this stuff, and they're all together. And then it just turns into a great big cluster foxtrot that's just murder everywhere you look. And if you're not Nazi enough, well, let's just take them out and shoot them, get them out of here. Her too. And it's almost like these grandiose ideas of a perfect society somehow just turn into pools of what. It's just, they just implode on themselves because they seem to just overreach to the point that they can't control themselves. The organization can't control themselves anymore. So, is this why they want to say, well, we got a solution for that? We'll let the robots sort it out.
Yeah.
Is that where we're headed here? Is that, I was just seeing an article about how all these Google bots are going to take to the skies, and Google Glass, you're going to be seeing a lot more of that. So, where does it all end, or do we know?
Yeah. This is probably a good time to bring up the kind of a side point that I am not anti-engineer or scientist in any way.
Neither am I.
I'm just, there are many, if not the majority, of people who study science. I don't care whether they have a degree, a master's degree, a PhD, that are good people, that think straight, that are good Americans or good citizens, whatever the country that they are, and that are not into technocracy. There's lots of them.
Which is basically the subjugation of humanity through technology.
That's right. So, I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater here. Personally, I love technology. I've been a technologist all of my life. And, when technology serves me, I feel good. I like my iPhone. I like my computer. I like the car I drive that has all the fancy stuff on it. I like if I get sick, I can go and get advanced surgery of various kinds and stuff to fix my problem. Technology has been a great blessing to mankind in many, many ways. And I'm not ready to go back to the Stone Age and live without it, quite frankly.
Right.
But here's the problem. As long as technology serves me, I won't get too upset. But when technology begins to demand that I serve it, I take exception.
Well, yeah, and that's the deal with the civilization. You give up some individual freedoms for the benefits of the collective, but after a while, the civilization stops serving the people, and the people just serve the civilization, and then it's downhill.
Right. That's exactly right. So this is where, when we talk about technocracy, we're not talking about all scientists or all engineers. It's a subset of them. But those particular people have this attitude that they are the self-appointed saviors of the world, and that we have to do what they say just because they say it.
Right, because they're smarter than we are.
Because they're smarter than we are. It's a very paternalistic attitude that they have. They really think that we're stupid, and even just if we have a PhD, if that were possible for all of us out here to have PhDs, that wouldn't really wash with them because they feel like they're the enlightened ones. Like they see the world better and differently than the rest of us possibly could. And so, according to Al Gore, he wants to punish climate deniers. Well, I hate to say, there are at least 30,000 PhD scientists who take total exception to climate change doctrine.
Yeah.
And they're deniers and they're PhDs. Well, see, that doesn't matter to Al Gore.
Of course not.
They're deniers just like the rest of you peons. They've slipped over the edge and they've discarded their PhD or whatever, and they've got over to believe what the rest of you flat earthers believe.
This may seem a little sophomoric, but I've mentioned this a couple of times over the last week or two, that the old Man from U.N.C.L.E. series, the United Network Command for Law and Enforcement, their enemy was Thrush,
yes,
which stood for Technological Hierarchy for the Removal of Undesirables and the Subjugation of Humanity. And I thought, when we were talking here, I thought, okay,
yes,
these guys know about technocracy.
Yes, indeed, they did.
That's where they got that idea.
Let me invoke the name of Aldous Huxley.
Yes.
Who wrote Brave New World.
Oh, yeah.
I had to read that book in high school as a classic. It kind of scared me. I had to write a book report on it. And there were better books I read, but it was kind of a scary book, especially back when I was in high school. I mean, we didn't have all the technology. This book was a very far-reaching, into the future type of a book. But the book was written in 1932. That's Brave New World. Aldous Huxley, he's a Brit.
Yeah.
Where did he get his inspiration for that book?
I wonder.
This was never publicized anywhere. The only thing in sight in those days was technocracy. That's the only thing. And technocracy jumped the Atlantic Ocean. As soon as it got started here, it jumped the Atlantic Ocean straight into Nazi Germany. They started a parallel movement of technocracy in Europe.
Well, they took it and ran with it, didn't they?
They took it and ran with it big time. That might be another story. I don't want to get everybody all upset about Nazi Germany and stuff right now. There is a huge story there, but it's parallel, and there's lots of interesting things there. But I don't want to get too far into it.
Okay.
But I will say that Huxley was looking straight into the face of technocracy when he wrote Brave New World. And if you remember the theme of Brave New World, it was a scientific dictatorship.
Yes.
That's what he got out of it. Mm. He looked at it and said, this is where this is going. And he saw it in 1932.
Yeah, and then Orwell comes along with 1984, and then there's the drug component.
Yes. And Orwell as well was inspired by technocracy.
Where does Robert Malthus fit into all of this?
Don't know.
Well, the guy who thought that human beings were absolutely too stupid to govern themselves, and that they would destroy themselves, and they're idiots, and they need to be controlled. Therefore, the Malthusian final solution.
Yeah.
That,
that's right. Yeah, we're too stupid to govern ourselves.
Oh, absolutely. Completely. Yeah. This is interesting. I was looking as your most singular speeches were being heard. I looked at some stuff, and in fact, I found one of the photographs. All these people lined up their gray suits and skirts and so forth, smart business suits for the women and so forth, and these names: Scott, Veblen, Hubbard, or maybe Hubert, and then this Howard Scott. It says, attempts to link Thorstein Veblen with technocracy began almost immediately after the public discovery of Howard Scott and technocracy in 1932. In 1933, an article in Living Age by Leon Artzruni is a good example. The title was Veblen and Technocracy. Anyway, Howard Scott reported in a recorded talk to members in Detroit in 1951, William Randolph Hearst, one of the worst of all Americans. I have the original telegram, signed in his handwriting, which was sent out to every Hearst official that the name technocracy was not to be used under any condition whatsoever. They were subject to dismissal and severance from the Hearst organization if they ever did so.
That's right.